bridge over troubled water? Well, in this case, it's the bridge that's troubled. It was already a very contentious debate, and then Governor Snyder came out in favor of the DRIC, the publicly built bridge between Michigan and Ontario, and the conversation has somehow intensified from there. You've probably seen the commercials now being run by the Ambassador Bridge folks. The stakes are enormous, and there are fears that the state that hesitates will be lost in the end. So what do we do? Good to have with us Matthew Moroun, Vice President of the company that runs the Ambassador Bridge, and the son of Matty Moroun. Good to have you back with us again, Matthew. They'd like to build a twin span right next to the current one. Next to him, Representative Paul Opsommer, Republican from the 93rd District. Paul, thank you very much for being here. On the other side of the table, the President of the Detroit Regional Chamber, Sandy Baruah, is back with us, as is Wayne County Executive Robert Ficano. Thank you, gentlemen, all of you, for being here. Matthew, let me start with you. Okay. I think everybody, especially in a time when a government has no money,
right.
Everybody loves the idea of anything that a public company can come in and foot the bill for. By all means, let's let them do it. But you've now got a Republican governor that's come out and said, look, we can all see where this is headed. Canada is not interested in letting you, and you can't build your bridge only halfway, obviously. It's got to land somewhere in Ontario. So why can't we just move on and get on with a plan that is acceptable to everybody involved on the other side of the bridge and get to these jobs that it'll create, and on and on and on.
So make sure I'm not confused there, Devin. You're talking about the Ambassador Bridge plan or the government bridge plan?
Well, I'm talking about the one that seems to be, well, in fact, no less than Brooks Patterson has said, look, I'm for the Moroun plan too if it was buildable, and it's not. Canada is not going to let you build your bridge, so it's a non-starter.
Well, first of all, that's not true at all, right? Legally, the Ambassador Bridge can't be stopped in Canada. We have to comply with the environmental, and once that's done, they can't stop us. Now, on a practical basis, what Canada is...
Legally, they can't tell you, wait, you can't build your bridge into this part of Windsor?
Well, legally, we have to comply with environmental laws, but once complied with, they can't stop it, right? Now, what Canada is trying to say, which is kind of odd, and people should take note of it, is they're saying, we want permission to land a Canadian bridge in Michigan, but we're going to obstruct and try to stop an American bridge from landing in Canada. And of course, that's not even fair in anyone's mindset. So the right thing to do is to build the Ambassador Bridge. When you talk about construction, we're the ones that are already much ahead of the game with all the land and some of the construction already begun.
Robert Ficano, take a whack at that.
Yeah, I have all the respect for the Moroun family, and I know that they've contributed a lot, especially to the metropolitan area. But some of the issues, and I know that Mr. Moroun has said, okay, the Canadian officials have said we don't want it, but we legally still can go ahead with it. I don't know if that's going to fly because, one, the mayor of Windsor is opposed to it, the province of Ontario is opposed to it, and that means how far is that going to go? Legally, you might be able to do it, but does it go all the way up to the Supreme Court? Meanwhile, is Buffalo building a bridge? And
time's wasted.
Is it going to swing over there? The other clever thing, I guess, that the governor did do was that when Canada said, well, we'll front the money, they went ahead and they went to the federal government and they said, you know what, we're not only going to utilize this money for, eventually we'll pay it back through the tolls, but we're going to leverage it for more federal money for our highways. And I understand just the other day that the federal government also said the other $450 million that Michigan's going to use to construct the bridge could also be leveraged. So you're talking about $1 billion of federal money for roads that everybody says, and I get the phone calls all the time, fix the potholes and start doing something with it.
Do you want to respond to that quickly before I bring Paul in?
Sure. You know, all this money that they're talking about leveraging is just other taxpayer money. You know, so at some point you have to decide.
It is, but the strength of matching dollars is what it is, and it is...
Right. Well, you know, whether it's federal funds, whether it's Canadian funds, whether it's Michigan funds to pay for the bridge that won't generate enough traffic to pay for itself after it's built, however you want to count the taxpayer dollars, at the end of the day, it's more taxpayer dollars. Just because you have a mechanism to garner more taxpayer dollars doesn't make it free.
Representative, what's the mood in Lansing
My
right now?
role as chair of the Transportation Department, or committee in the House, is really to take the emotion out of the whole project and begin looking at it piece by piece. Is there a legal agreement signed by Canada that they agreed to allow the Morouns to build the second span? If that's so, that comes into consideration. Is there an investment-grade traffic study that really predicts the amount of traffic crossings at a specific revenue so we know whether it's going to make money or not?
Key element, yes.
Are we going to have availability payments? In other words, is Canada or the United States or Michigan or Windsor going to guarantee that that bridge makes money at some point in the future? And if that happens, then I have to look at, do I want to use government money to compete against a private business, which in the House is going to be a very tough sell.
Well, the governor seems to believe that at the very worst it's revenue neutral, that this isn't going to cost the state anything. And that's how he says he arrived at his conclusion.
And a lot of people are saying that. You do hear that story out there. I need to see, because when we run this through the House Transportation Committee, it's going to be based on facts. It's not going to be based on hearsay. It's not going to be based upon someone's opinion. It's not going to be, I heard from somebody that this is the case. We're going to be looking at facts.
Sandy, it's a fair point, I think, that some of the supporters of the Moroun plan put forward, which is, look, we can't just allow another government, even though this has to be a cooperative effort, we can't just tell them, look, this is how it's going to be, and just fall all over ourselves because they've got a pile of money. Shouldn't we be making our own decisions here and pushing forward that way, on the way we want it to look?
Devin, a couple key points. First of all, let's be very clear that there's not a single Michigan taxpayer dollar at stake here with the new bridge, this new international bridge crossing. Even if only one car goes across that new bridge, there isn't a single Michigan taxpayer dollar at risk, because the Canadians are assuming all of the risk. Even if it makes no money, they're assuming all the risk. Secondly, I have tremendous respect for public-private partnerships, for what the Ambassador Bridge folks have done. They've owned the bridge for over 35 years. It's an 82-year-old bridge. It's a landmark for Detroit. But at the end of the day, when we do public-private partnerships, when we have private ownership of a public good, that should not preclude the public sector from building additional infrastructure. Let's face it, one of the key roles that government has is to build our infrastructure. And we need to build our infrastructure for the future. Just because somebody owns a piece of our public infrastructure now shouldn't preclude future infrastructure from being built.
And I've got two problems with that. One, in writing, all I have is a $550 million commitment from Canada. And what that does is pay for the plaza and for the expansion and actually the correcting of I-75 for the entrances into the bridge. I keep hearing different stories on whether they're going to guarantee availability payments forever. That would be interesting. When I talk to people in Canada, they say, no, that's not a part of our agreement. Availability payments really is what a lot of this decision is going to come down to, because if Canada is going to guarantee, besides $550 million, maybe a couple $1 billion more of availability payments over the next 40 years, that's a decision Canada
But the availability payments
to
come to play in terms of what the private sector is willing to take on, and we haven't done those negotiations yet.
Right. The reason why they're talking about availability payments, Devin, is because there's not enough traffic for the bridge to pay for itself. There's not enough traffic.
Well, then to Sandy's point, Sandy says that even if one car goes across it, Canada foots the liability.
With Canadian money and federal money and Michigan money from the Treasury and the taxpayers, you can make water go uphill.
Let me do a quick commercial break. Some have suggested that what we're seeing here is a little bit like what's going on in the NFL. There's a huge pile of money and you can't decide how to share it. We'll talk about that. We continue on Flashpoint right after this. Welcome back, Flashpoint, talking about a bridge too far for some anyway. Robert Ficano, you wanted to make a point there before we got to the break.
Yeah, I mean, we hear about the traffic that's down, and it probably is right now, and it's not picked up as much since 2011. But in this area, first of all, we're starting to see the auto industry pick up. And so with that, you're going to see the volumes that are going to pick up as well. If we are concerned about the level of crossing over, why is Buffalo so engaged trying to build another bridge? We do know that Canada, for example, is really redoing its port in Montreal because they want to grab some of the overseas shipping that's going to come down, and the NAFTA highway is going to come right through Detroit when you hook up Mexico, the United States and Canada. So even if it's down right now, if we anticipate in 5 years that all of a sudden it picks up and we're not ready for it, what do you do?
In fact, Matthew, I know you hear this, where you try and downplay the traffic. It's just we don't need this, but you're fighting like mad to keep it, obviously. So there is something very profitable there for you to fight for.
Absolutely, Devin. So if you cut to the chase on the traffic, right? If you just use actual numbers as opposed to prognostications, traffic at the Ambassador Bridge over the last 10 years is down about 40%. If you include all the Michigan bridges to Canada, it's down about 44, almost 50%.
Has it moved in step with the economy, though? Don't we expect a turnaround?
It did go down some with the Great Recession, but it's going down steadily as we lose our manufacturing base. And as much as I'm for the Montreal ports or the Port of Halifax, that traffic, when it comes through Detroit, has to have some reason to stop. And that's where we have to go to retool and refurbish our manufacturing base. I want that more than anyone. And traffic is the main problem with the whole bridge argument right now. Our traffic's down 50%. If you build a new independent bridge crossing, we'll have 25% of the traffic that used to be there, and the new bridge will only have 25%. It's just not enough.
Trade with Canada last year, both ways, went up 20%. And global trade is increasing everywhere, and it's no different here. And when you talk about traffic on the bridge, first of all, the long-term trend for traffic across the bridges in our area is up over the long term. Matthew is exactly right. In the last few years, because of the recession, because of post 9/11, some of the traffic has gone down. But both the Ambassador Bridge Company folks and MDOT and some of the independent analysis estimate increased traffic going forward. I mean, in 2009, the Ambassador Bridge Company, when you're looking to finance the second span, you had estimates even greater than MDOT's estimates for increased traffic. So I'm not sure why we're having a debate about future traffic.
One reason we are is when the Blue Water Bridge had a second span, we heard the exact same arguments. Traffic was going to grow forever. We need a second span. We now have a second span. We have never hit the crossing numbers they predicted for Port Huron. They were lower in '94 than when the bridge opened. We have fewer cars crossing the bridge today than we had when we only had one span.
Somehow I always managed to wait in line there, though. How does that work out?
The point there, too, is not the bridge itself, but it's customs. And the time you go through customs, I think if you went to the Ambassador Bridge right now, you would look at all of the customs posts there, and only half of them manned by customs.
A lot of people look out, though, and see whichever plan you want to go with. I've seen estimates of about 10,000 jobs that this enormous, it would be one of the biggest construction projects. You may be dubious of those numbers, but it would be one of the biggest construction economic projects in the state. What will it take to get this moving forward?
Those numbers are way off, by the way.
Are they?
Devin? Yeah, because we've looked very carefully at building our own second span, as we're ready to do, with our own money. And as much as I'd like to say that they create thousands and thousands of jobs, it doesn't. The days of thousands of people using a shovel in their hands to build a major infrastructure project are gone. They're going to use heavy machinery. There's not going to be thousands of people there, and the people that are going to build it, they'll be gone as soon as it's built.
I know we're talking about levels, but it's unclear to me, if the Ambassador Bridge is able to build its second span, would both spans be open at the same time? Wouldn't that be the same as two bridges?
Well, yes, it would, except the plazas are already built. We cover the shortest distance across the river, so the bridge is 500 million as opposed to $1 billion plus, or close to $2 billion.
But my point is that there's actually two bridges.
Right, two spans
next to each other.
The same plaza, right? So the same number of customs or government employees there could be there. You don't have to duplicate government payrolls. And U.S. Customs payroll at Detroit is about $100 million a year.
I wanted to get to one other thing really quickly before we have to take a break. These ads that you've started to run here that everybody has seen by now, they're not only running in Michigan, they're running all over the place. It seems it's a nationwide buy, I believe.
That's right.
Why is this applicable or of concern to people in, I don't know, Florida?
Well, because if you listen carefully to the sales pitch for the government bridge, it's let's use some Canadian money, let's use some Michigan money that's already been spent, about $45 million.
OPM, other people's money, is one of the first.
And then let's run to Washington D.C. and grab another $2 billion of taxpayer money. So, what we have to start realizing that whether it's Michigan taxpayer money or federal taxpayer money, it's all coming out of our pocket and our future pocket.
Yeah, but the federal money, the actual federal money, would actually be used for roads all throughout the state of Michigan. If Michigan doesn't use that pot, it goes to the other 49 states.
It's our fair share.
Yeah, so we're just trying to get our share.
I was hoping we'd be able to sign an agreement right here at the table. Gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Great insights.
Thank you.